So we recently learned that the government shutdown possibility has been extended. The fiscal year, the new fiscal year for the U.S. government started on October 1st, but a temporary measure was put in place to keep funding the government for 45 days, which kicks the deadline down the road to November 17th. So just a little over a month away from when we're recording this, there's a real possibility the government gets shut down. Before we get into what this could mean for your stock portfolio, please take a minute and check out the link you see on your screen. You get the top 10 stocks to buy right now from my sponsor, The Motley Fool, and it's the best way to support this work that Tyler and I are doing on YouTube. So, without further ado, I mentioned there's a strong possibility the government will shut down on November 17th. Obviously, there are some convenience factors in play here, right? So, for example, last time when the government shut down, it ruined my family's trip to a national park. Um, there could be travel delays as TSA agents will be forced to work without pay. Uh, Small business loans won't be coming from the Small Business Administration for the duration, so it could be an inconvenience to small businesses. And it could cause delays if you're trying to get in touch with Social Security, for example, or other government agencies, as a lot of non essential workers would be furloughed in a government shutdown. So, with all of that in mind, a lot of investors are asking the question, how would a government shutdown affect my portfolio? So, a lot of people mistakenly put this in the same basket as, if our debt were to be downgraded or if we were to default on our debt obligations or something like that. Because when they think of government not doing what it's supposed to be doing, that's a lot of what they think about in the financial markets. But it hasn't really, it's not really the same thing. So Tyler's joining me, and Tyler, what do you think a government shutdown would mean? Are you worried for your stocks or anything like that?
The actual event itself, not really. We have had government shutdowns before, and there's a lot of, sell the news or buy the rumor, sell the news sort of thing that you tend to get around these events, and they can be relatively short-term shocks, I guess, if you will, but on a long-term investing basis, they're just kind of, blips on the road. The thing that would be a little bit more, I guess you could say, not risk, I guess, but a factor that I would want to consider is if, as a result of negotiating out of this shutdown or subsequent shutdowns or continuing resolutions and trying to lock down a more consistent funding program, that we start to see a ratcheting down of government spending. There's some twofold aspects to that. Obviously, businesses that are a little bit more dependent on government spending. I'm thinking some of maybe the more ambitious Department of Energy programs or things like that, where we're looking at some more like speculative companies in energy. That could maybe be something that's a little bit more affected. I don't think in a revised budget for the U.S. government, we're going to see things like, the U.S. government not pay its rent on buildings that it owns because they're publicly traded companies that, rent out to the U.S. government. I don't think that's going to be a problem. I don't think you're going to see huge declines in defense spending, although we did see, if anybody remembers from 2013, it was a combination shutdown and I think it was the Simpson-Bowles agreement, which basically put a cap on how much more spending could be added. And we actually saw some, I would call it a drag on defense companies for several years because they weren't spending on a lot of things. And then when that expired, I believe in 2018, 2019, we started to see some changes to that. So there's the actual event itself. I don't think it's an inconvenience on a personal level, but I don't see it having a huge impact on what we do. To that point, I think this is kind of an investor lesson. There are going to be a lot of people out there who say that it will, that they're predicting epic stock collapses or things like that because of government shutdowns or because of, all of a sudden U.S. government rated debt is going to be massively downgraded because of a shutdown or something like that. There tends to be a lot of fear mongering around these sort of events. And as long-term investors, you can sometimes get caught up in that. Like, well, if I'm dedicating all this capital to this, and this is a short-term event, how much am I at risk? But like I said, this has happened before, and we have pulled through. One thing that you could kind of say about U.S. government spending and political stuff is we kind of muddle through eventually, and that would be my long-term message. Don't take give too much credence to maybe the doom and gloom prophets out there that are saying that this could be the end of your stock portfolio.
We've had quite a few government shutdowns in my lifetime. Over the past 20 shutdowns, just to kind of give you some numbers, the average stock market return during the shutdown was 0.04%. So, in other words, the market's generally flat during the average shutdown. In the last 10 shutdowns, it was up during 5 of them and down during 5 of them. So, it really depends more on what else is going on in the economy and in the world than the shutdown itself. I mentioned the last shutdown ruined my trip to a national park. That was in 2019, the last time we had a prolonged government shutdown. But during that shutdown, the stock market rose by 10% because the economy was generally strong. Things were firing on all cylinders in that regard. So there wasn't any big concern, and everyone knew that the government would be funded eventually. It was more of an inconvenience than anything else that the government was shut down. Government employees get back paid at the end of the government shutdown. Agencies catch up on whatever they miss. So there's really not a big reason to be that concerned. It's not like Social Security checks will stop coming. That's considered an essential function of the government, so that continues to be funded. Essential workers still work during a government shutdown. It's really important to mention that. Travel doesn't stop. TSA workers still work. They just don't get paid till the shutdown's over. Um, life goes on. Take it with a big grain of salt. I wouldn't sell any stocks just because there could be a government shutdown coming. Whether or not a shutdown will actually arrive is a totally separate argument. Um, I think it'll be avoided or at least kicked down the road again before November 17th comes. A lot of people think a shutdown is inevitable at this point. A lot of it has to do with what happens with the Speaker of the House nominations. There's a lot of moving parts there. But as far as your stock portfolio goes, I wouldn't panic too much. Once again, thank you so much for joining me. Be sure to click subscribe if you don't subscribe to my channel already. And as always, this video is sponsored by The Motley Fool. Be sure to visit www.fool.com/Frankel to receive the top 10 best stocks to buy now.